Welcome to the Bush League Huddle Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Raj, joined alongside Nacc and Fab, and we have a fun show for you guys as we continue our divisional previews with the AFC South, which might have the best young QBs in the league of any division, with CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Trevor Lawrence, alongside the banana peel eating, mayonnaise slurping Will Levis. On today's show, we'll have Mike Di Lisio from Houston representing the Texans, and Jason De Oliveira from Montreal repping the Colts. Before we bring them on, we do have a bit of housekeeping news from some training camp notes. As you might all know, the Hall of Fame game will be this Thursday. The Hall of Fame induction ceremony will be this weekend as well. So we are very close to some real football that matters. But first, boys, there was a lot of training camp news recently. A lot of quarterbacks got paid heavy money. Tua Tagovailoa was telling the crowd, "Show me the money."
Yeah, that was funny.
Jerry Maguire style, which I wasn't a big fan of, to be honest. But Tua got 167 million guaranteed. Love got 155 million guaranteed. We just spoke about this literally just before we went online. How we were all shocked that Tua got a higher number than Love. I don't see him as that caliber of player personally, but good on those agents for finally locking those in.
Yeah, look, I think I think everyone's just getting handcuffed now. You need a QB, and all these QBs are just getting signed, right? Like every single one of them that really haven't done much, right? Like if you go back to even Jalen Hurts, like he had one good year, that Super Bowl year, and they paid him all that money. Did really
Yeah.
terribly the year after. Love did it for what, half a year, and now he's got all that guaranteed money. Maybe that's why it's lower than Tua's. Tua's been in the league a little longer than a little bit more, but I don't know. These salaries are getting pretty crazy for people who haven't really done much. The Lawrence one comes to mind as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
There's
was about to
another
say
one.
that since we're on the topic of the division, right? That's 5 years, 275 million. I don't know how much is guaranteed on that.
He's
Over
200
enough.
million is
he's in the
guaranteed on
200
that
million.
contract.
Yeah.
And
He's in the
he,
200 million.
like, those guys haven't done anything yet. And if anything, Trevor Lawrence, like, you
Well,
can even
Lawrence has
argue.
won a playoff game, right?
Right, but like,
I think we all still agree that with Lawrence, there's still meat on the bone left on that. What's good with the Love contract is that he was holding in, so he was participating in a lot of team meetings, but he wasn't participating in practice, I believe. On the other side, there's Dak, who has negotiations going on. Not necessarily that there's a holdout, but he's on the last year of his deal. I believe he's making $62 million salary this year. Crazy amount, and he has a no trade clause as well. So
Yeah, that's brutal.
it was really interesting during one of the training camp press conferences. I think he was saying how some of the notable great QBs have played with two teams, kind of inkling that if he has to go, he has to go. So
I think the writing's on the wall there, man.
I think
Yeah, a
so
little
too.
bit.
Yeah, I think so too. So they have that. They have obviously CeeDee Lamb as well, who isn't a true holdout.
Yeah.
Hasn't practiced. I don't think he's been in the facility either. So I mean, he is eligible for being fined. He likely will be fined, obviously. So I think for CeeDee Lamb, he's probably wanting to be closer to that $35 million number for Justin Jefferson on a yearly basis.
But he
I
wants
think
more. He wants more. They want to be him and Parsons. They said they want to be the highest paid non QBs in the NFL.
Yeah, I read that too.
So I see him going. I think he should go below that number. But then we also have Brandon Ayuk, who at least is doing a hold-in. He's participating in the team meetings, but not practicing. I see him closer to that, like Amon-Ra, maybe above Amon-Ra St. Brown, $30 million a year number, but maybe below Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. So it'll be really interesting to see on those fronts. Maybe quickly, guys, do you have any concerns of those two guys drafting them if their contract situations don't come to fruition before the season?
Are we talking about Dak and Lamb?
CD and Ayuk.
Oh, Ayuk. Honestly, it's going to just depend on how long they miss at this point. Honestly, they've missed what, 1 week so far, not even a week, a few days. If both of them don't participate in any training camp, then I think it'll knock them their ADP a little bit, but essentially, like, are you really not going to draft Lamb if he comes to you, let's say in the second round, because he didn't participate in training camp? I'm going to say no. I'm definitely going to grab him.
Well, wasn't that the situation with Jonathan Taylor last year? Well, didn't he not come to a contract until
His first 4 games?
Yeah.
He was on. Wasn't he on the pup though?
Right,
Last
but it was
last year.
also for a contract holdout, was it
Yeah,
not?
yeah,
No,
it
but he
was.
was
Like
injured.
they
He
say,
was
yeah, right.
injured.
He was injured, right? But like they put him on the pup, but it was more for a contract holdout. And once he got his contract, he played after.
He was
Y-
he was still.
I,
I think he was still away for a couple weeks because of
yeah,
injury as
I,
well. He
I
was legit hurt.
I think the more telling one was, or the more comparable one was Josh Jacobs, who signed just
Yeah,
before the season
Yeah,
started, a week before the season started, and we clearly saw he was out of shape.
sluggish. Yeah,
He
yeah,
was
it impacted
sluggish.
his play big time.
It
Yeah,
impacted his play. I had drafted him in one league as an RB1. I think I drafted him in our other league, a Fab, in the
yeah.
12th spot,
Hmm.
and he just didn't live up to that bidding.
I
So
just think like that eliteness, like that CD Lamb eliteness, and it's a wide receiver. It's a bit different.
I
Like
agree.
I don't think he's gonna miss a beat if he starts week one. Like I don't think it's gonna be a problem. Running back, I think it's a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I agree. So it'll be interesting to review all these. A lot of other training camp news that we'll surely hear about in the coming days and weeks. But it's great to have football back on. So we'll continue with our AFC South preview. We're gonna have Mike Di Lisio come on live from Houston, Texas, representing the
Mike,
Houston Texans. Mike, thanks so much for joining us today. Great to have you on the Bush League Huddle Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, Mike?
It's great to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
Amazing, Mike. So we're going to ask you a question about Joe Mixon. So Mixon, he was with the Bengals for a very long time, almost 8 years, I believe, 8, 9 years, and he was one of the stalwarts of their offensive attack. Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator for the Texans, was gushing over Joe Mixon prior to camp, saying that he's an absolute workhorse in every regard. He works a ton. He loves football. He wants to learn and grow, and he fits into their culture. He was saying how he wants to be used as a passing threat, carrying the rock, pass blocking, doing everything that he can, being that three down running back. Mike, factor of fiction, Mixon as an RB1 in PPR, factoring in that he actually had 257 rushes for 1,000 yards last year, 52 catches, and 12 total touchdowns. Factor of fiction, Mixon as a bona fide RB1 in PPR.
I think, given all the storylines that are going on in the city right now, uh, just hearing you guys talk about salaries, Stroud's going to get paid, but obviously we got everything else going on in the wide receiver room. I think it's an absolute fact that Mixon is going to be borderline RB1. I have him pinned probably more in the probably 9, 10, 11 range. Right now, just looking at comparable stats, what he's put up in prior years. Anthony, you'll know this being an AFC North fan. The Bengals O line was pretty much trash throughout, I would say, the prime, if not peak, of Mixon's career.
yeah,
And he's coming here in a really good spot. Obviously, not in the same situation that Henry's coming into with Lamar eating a ton of rushing yards. We all know that Stroud stays in the pocket. He doesn't leave very often, and I think Mixon's going to get the ball a lot. A lot of people have brought up the fact that Damian Pierce might eat into his workload. I think they're terrified of Damian Pierce. I think they saw what they can get. There was obviously that signing of Cam Akers with having two
Mm,
severed Achilles tendons. I don't see him even coming into play. I think Mixon's going to get a ton of workload. I think he's going to be in the red zone frequently. And I think where there's a separator in the statistics has to do solely around touchdowns. Just looking at high stakes fantasy rankings, average ADP of anywhere between 12, 13, 14, 15 this year. I think the separator for him is going to be getting into the end zone. People forget that he's 6'1", 230 pounds. This is a big dude, and he's
yeah.
got reliability too. I know he's getting up there in age. That probably is eating into his ADP right now, but I don't think it's going to take much for him to get to the top 10.
Mike, I just want to lean in on the Pierce factor a bit because I think if people are willing to draft Joe Mixon this offseason or this coming fantasy season, they probably have some reservations about the fact that Pierce, he did have 1,000 yards in his rookie season. They might think that it's a two-headed monster there. What makes you think that the Texans are down on Pierce after a really good rookie season?
I would say Devin Singletary is your answer to that. Bringing Devin Singletary and watching him take away, especially anything relating to goal line. Damian Pierce wasn't even in play in the last half of the year. We saw Singletary's performance in the playoffs. I really think Mixon's going to be the guy. Just trying to get a read on his snap count, what it's going to look like if the Texans offense does what everybody thinks they're going to do. They're going to be in the red zone even more often this year. Their strength of schedule comes into play too. I think they're going to be in a lot of shootouts, and I think it's going to be Mixon's ball. And having him potentially score 8, 9, 10 touchdowns, even on the receiving end. I know you mentioned Bobby Slowick's comment in regards to him getting a ton of receptions. He's capped out at 60 receptions in, I think it was 2 years ago. So it's going to be hard to say that he will not do something similar that he did with the Bengals. And if he does that and obviously stays healthy, which he's shown in his career, you're going to see a guy definitely be on that fringe RB1.
Nacc, what do you think?
Yeah, look, I know you touched upon age, Mike, but he's only 28, so it's still pretty prime for a running back. I was surprised. I had to look that up this morning.
He's 28.
He's only 28 years old.
Feels older.
Born in
Yeah, he
1996.
feels
He
older.
feels
Wow.
like he could be 32. Like
Yeah.
that's what I went to go look it up, and it was 28 years old. So I still think he has juice left in the tank, and like you said, he's in a dynamic offense right now. Arguably a better offensive line than he's had in previous years in Cincinnati. They were improving on it last year, but it's still, I think it was still bottom third of the league in terms of pass protection and in terms of running. So I think in this offense is suited perfectly for him. He goes from one dynamic QB to another, an up and coming QB. And we always say, who are young QB's best friends? It's the running back. So I actually think he is going to get a ton of catches. I think with the firepower at running back this year, that top, he might just fall short of that top 10. So I agree with your like 11, 12 finish, but it wouldn't surprise me if he pushed for like that number 10, uh, number RB10, honestly, on the year. He has the potential to do so for sure.
Fab, between Travis Etienne, Isaiah Pacheco, Devon Achane, Joe Mixon, where do you think Mixon falls? That's 9, 10, 11, 12.
Where does he fall at the end of the season, or where am I drafting him?
Where are you
It's
drafting
two different
him?
questions. I'm drafting him. The only guy I would probably pause would be with Pacheco, but I'm drafting him before Achane. I'm drafting him before Etienne. Last year he finished RB6.
I can't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
Like, he's been consistent every year. Like, you want a guy who's going to get you yardages. You want a guy who's going to get the rock. You want a guy who's going to get volume.
Hey, Etienne finished the top 3, I think, last year. Still.
Yeah, but a lot of people are fading Etienne right now, and I can understand why, with all the comments coming out of the training camp. When look at the comments coming out for Joe Mixon, they're the complete opposite. And like, they brought him in on purpose to fill the workhorse shoes that Devin Singletary had before. They know that Dameon Pierce is not the guy. They need someone who's going to be able to carry the rock 20 times a game, no problem. Catch passes in the backfield. He caught 52 receptions last year. If he caps out again at 50 this year, it's fantastic. Like, he's, in my opinion, he's solid RB1 for me. Solid RB1. Like, there are the guys that we all know is going to go ahead of him, but then when you get to this range, like, I can totally understand you picking Derrick Henry before him, but then after that it becomes a crapshoot, honestly. And I'm not touching Achane, pardon the pronunciation,
He's
just
going
because
too high.
I just don't see how that production is sustainable. We talked about this already. And I know, like, Joe Mixon, he's a lunch pill guy. He's like that James Conner. Like, he's not a nice looking name to have on your team, but he's going to get you your points every single week. And if he finishes with an RB6 finish like he did last year, like, hey man, take it to the bank. Like, it's an easy pick. It's an easy pick for me.
When I was reviewing the numbers, I couldn't believe that he finished RB6.
Yeah,
like when you watch him and you look at him, it was plodding, it was slow. But I think to Nacc and Mike's point was, the Bengals offensive line was a bit treacherous, and I know they did improve it this offseason, but a little bit too late. So we'll see what they do with, I believe that's Zach Moss and Chase Brown on that front. But I would tend to agree. I've typically been a bit down on Joe Mixon recently, having owned him in a few leagues. But I think with this offensive infrastructure, Bobby Slowick style of offense, Shanahan style of offense, I think he's in line for a lot of catches, a lot of zone run scheme, and he's a hybrid. He's a power blocker. He's a power back who still has a bit of shiftiness to him. So I think that RB1 is very fair. Mike, any lasting words on Mixon and your confidence, or on overall the Texans from a fantasy perspective?
Fantasy perspective, getting into the whole debate on the wide receiver room is probably a whole episode in itself.
Yeah.
Uh, I really think the ADPs are all over the place. They're super hyped, and who knows? If we all could predict the future, these ADPs would be a lot easier to foresee what's going to happen. Nico Collins obviously put up crazy yardage last year. The year prior was riddled with injuries, so it's going to be interesting to see if he can actually stay healthy. When it comes to Diggs, I think that's probably the biggest question mark. Scared me watching him in Buffalo last year, knowing that you have Josh Allen who escapes death at every given moment, and you would think Diggs would separate and still find ways to get open. And I think he struggled. And I think, going to age, and I know some of these guys are not that old, but when you lose that half step, and I think it might be obvious for Diggs, and we'll find out a lot, I think, in the first 4 or 5 games of the year. And I think there's a lot of value in Tank Dell. I think, seeing him at, wide receiver 28 on average, that guy's a boom bust guy. He's got incredibly high ceiling. He could fit into what Noah Brown did in the last part of the year when the receivers were going down week after week. So it'll be really interesting to see. I think when it comes to Stroud at QB5, and I know you guys talk a lot about it, super flex, and having two quarterbacks. I think Stroud's going to have to put up ridiculous numbers to maintain his QB5 rating. Uh, we're obviously looking at potentially 42, 4,300 yards, 35 touchdowns. He doesn't leave the pocket, as I mentioned earlier, and he's probably not going to get a lot of rushing touchdowns. So he's going to have a big year. I'm excited about the defense. I think Miko's going to probably settle in, and it's going to be really interesting to see Stingley, Will Anderson, Petrie, a lot of the younger guys that if they can stay healthy, they're going to be a dynamic defense.
So you sound very optimistic. That's a great segue, Mike, into a season prediction and division finish. It sounds like you think they're going to win the division. You sound really, really, really optimistic on the Texans this year.
I do, and I think you guys are going to get to the Colts. But I think the Texans will win the division. I don't think they're going to dominate and run away with it. Looking at the betting lines right now, they have the Texans at 10.5 games. I think that's a pretty accurate call. I could see them finishing 10-7. The strength in the back half of their schedule is really, really tough. And obviously, health means everything to the NFL and every single team. But when they have to come down the stretch and if they have to win games, it's going to be really interesting to see what the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Dolphins, in the last 3 games of the year after their bye. So, conservatively, I'd say they'll finish 10-7, and on the up, I guess you can call it their ceiling, maybe 12-5, 11-6. But I'll be surprised if they win that many games. I think a lot of the games will be close. I think there's going to be a couple of shootouts at the end of the year, and I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and the division obviously gets a little bit better. Anthony Richardson back. You have to think the Titans with some of the moves that they made get 1 or 2, 3 wins better as well. So I think the AFC South is becoming one of the more underrated divisions in the AFC. So,
but if
Mike,
Will Levis hits, it would be that'd be pretty crazy division.
He has the talent.
He does have the talent and the arm to do so, but he's obviously got to hit. It's funny, Mike. You were just saying, just to touch upon one last thing. You were saying you're staying away maybe from Nico and from Diggs. I heard today that people are now fading Tank Dell because they just think that there's going to be too many targets with Collins, Diggs, and then Mixon, and people are fading a bit Tank Dell.
I think that's the scenario that just makes things extremely complicated. Is that when you have 3 amazing receivers, where do you draft them? Where do you get value, and where are you potentially, blowing a draft pick on some guy and then it doesn't pan out? In my opinion, and what I'm going to be targeting as well in leagues that do have a tight end slot, fade and wait for Dalton Schultz because I think there's value there too. He's a tight end 13 or 14, and that might be another potential steal. When it comes to the wide receivers, I think it's going to be just a really hard prediction. We saw that from a couple teams last year. it's pretty much, it looks like the situation in Chicago. It's like, okay, where do you take DJ Moore? Where do you take Adunze? Where do you take, Allen? It's just, there's too much going on. And if you can shoot your shot and you get value on them, great. But if not, you're risking a high end draft pick on a guy that is in a complicated situation.
Right.
It's a great comparison. I totally agree.
That's really good. Yeah, I really like that. Mike, thanks so much for joining. Really appreciate your insight. It was great to hear from boots on the ground.
Literally.
From Houston, literally.
The city is hyped, guys. I can tell you that they care about the Astros more than anything else. But right now, I think this is as big
Those
of a
cheaters,
hype as
they still care about the cheaters.
Yeah, big time. Baseball is everything. When it comes to the Texans, the fans are new. There's a lot of hype. There's probably as much hype as there was since 2019, pre-Deshaun massage gate. But yeah, it's
don't start the massage jokes with Fab on, please.
What are you guys talking about?
Like, how tight you guys want to keep this? I'm like, can you get a bit loose or no? It's all right. We can talk about Deshaun. But there's
Deshaun got very loose. So did his towel.
Mike, we'd love to have you on for Deshaun fact or fiction at some point on that story at a later time.
Anytime, guys. It was a pleasure doing this. You guys have been doing an awesome job, and thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Mike.
Appreciate
it, Mike.
Thank you.
You got it. Take care, guys.
That was Mike Di Lisio live from Houston, representing the Texans. Really interesting thoughts. I got the sense from him, he was basically saying in crowded wide receiver rooms, just kind of like avoid it if there's guys going at really high ADPs, which is not bad advice. Like
the comparison to the Bears is perfect because you have an existing established wide receiver that comes into a new room where you have sort of a top dog that exists already, and then a rookie or a second-year wide receiver that's been playing very well, right? So it's very comparable. And you look at the two situations, it's like you kind of want to, I'm steering clear to a degree, unless they fall in my lap at a great ADP, I'm not exactly targeting Nico Collins or targeting DJ Moore, at their current ADPs, right? It's it's a wait and see approach for me, but
and I actually don't mind you can't really make a prediction on who's going to finish ahead of, because you just don't know. You don't know what's happening in practice. You don't know what the pecking order is.
No,
it's too early, so it's going to really be a crapshoot on that front. From one superstar QB with the Texans to another in the Colts, we have Jason de Oliveira joining us from Montreal, representing the Colts. Jason, thanks for joining us. How are you doing, buddy?
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for the invite.
What's up, Jason?
What's going on, man?
And that is the 18 Peyton Manning jersey.
Yeah, not the 12. Forget. I don't want any questions about Andrew Luck, okay?
Awesome. So, Anthony Richardson obviously was an electrifying player last year. He played 3 games before being shut down for the season due to shoulder injury, but showed amazing flashes from a running perspective. But also, a lot of people were really impressed with his deep passing and knowledge of the offense. Jason, fact or fiction, Anthony Richardson will finish as a top 3 fantasy QB ahead of CJ Stroud?
That's a very good question, guys. Very good question. If you ask me to choose between Richardson and Stroud, I think if you want to hit a home run, you draft Richardson. If you want a safe pick, draft Stroud. But by saying that, I'm not saying that Stroud has the biggest floor, or the highest floor, because I think Richardson has the highest floor. What I'm saying is Richardson has to play. And that's the big thing, right? I think he's the ultimate wild card. If you think about quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, tight end, I think he's the guy that you just don't know. The guy played 13 college games, as a starter. He played 4 NFL games. Yeah, you've seen some, a glimpse of what he can do. But the one main thing is that you never saw him with Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. They only had 2 snaps together against Tennessee, and that's where he got hurt. So you can imagine, having Richardson and Taylor in the backfield, what it can open up, and especially since the whole O-line from the Colts are coming back. So you have some stability there. You have Steichen that's implementing his offense for a second year in a row with the Colts. You got Pittman, you got Downs, you got AP, you got Pierce, but you got a new guy. You got Mitchell that they drafted in the second round that are really high on. And so far they had 3 days in the training camp, and Mitchell has been lighting it up. So
I saw one of the catches. I saw one of the highlight catches he made. I was watching the training camp show on NFL Network, and I always liked him. He looks like he's the type of player they need because Michael Pittman is just not a burner. He's more of a more of a slasher, and I think that's the type of guy who could really win deep that they need. Fab, any thoughts on AR as a top three? Top three. That means he'd go. That means he'd finish in the Allen, Mahomes. He'd probably finish either ahead of Hurts or Lamar Jackson.
Listen, the guy had 75 fantasy points in 2.5 games last year. Like, I know it's a small sample size, but I'm fully on board with Anthony Richardson finishing as a top 3 quarterback this year.
Wow.
But fully on board. He has to
play. But I'm also not concerned as much as I was last year about his, because I faded him a little bit last year, and I think Stamati drafted him, and it was very much like feast or famine. It was more famine for the entirety of the year. But this year, though, like, I feel a lot more confident. I think like a lot of the points that Jason hit on like make perfect sense. But in addition to that, they still want him to run the ball. I think he's become a little bit more a little more aware of NFL defenses now after 1 year removed.
Yeah.
I'm much more confident in him sustaining a full year this year and playing out the entire season and firmly finishing as a top 5 quarterback and definitely pushing for a top 3. Like, if I'm at that spot and I'm drafting, especially in 2 QB league, Anthony Richardson, and it's like before CJ Stroud, I would even take him before Jalen Hurts.
I have him. So we're gonna probably do some pre-draft rankings soon and actually have him second. But I have him second.
Yeah, you were fading him.
He's the only guy that can push Josh Allen for number 1 quarterback and probably number 1 fantasy player.
You know what he reminds me of, and if like again, I think all 4 of us are going to say the same thing, but he has to play. He's been hurt in every single game he started so far in his career.
Yeah,
right.
Even the first one.
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah, all of them. He hasn't played a game in the NFL where he wasn't hurt.
So imagine what he can do when he's healthy.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if he plays all 15 weeks of fantasy football, like, he has that ability to obviously push for that QB1 and win championship type player. Like, he's a guy that is gonna, win you championships. He reminds me a bit of like Cam Newton style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, he's Cam Newton really with he's kind of like a hybrid, but he just has that mentality. He loves to play, and like he has. I don't know. I see it. I see the it factor in him. Like, I was also fading him a bit more, but again, he has the potential to do it. I'm just really scared about how, like, did he learn a little bit how to take some kind of hits? Did he learn how to avoid some kind of hits that he takes, like go out of bounds, slide, don't go shoulder first into, a 260-pound linebacker. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So hopefully he's coached in that aspect. And if he does do all those right things, he could unseat Josh Allen very easily and by mountains, basically.
Jason, you're used to this with Andrew Luck, right? Because Andrew Luck, and I listened to some podcasts that had to do with kind of his 4 or 5 year history or 6-7 year history with the Colts when he was elite. And one of the things with Luck he always said was that he always felt like he absolutely needed to feel hit. Yeah. Like he felt like he would do him a disservice if he would shy away from hits. Do you find that's the same type of mindset that Anthony Richardson has?
Not at all. Exactly. Andrew Luck wanted to get hit. He wanted to feel in the game. And he always said by getting hit, he felt part of the game. He felt like he had like a duty with the other guys saying, to play football, you got to get hit. You got to get, into the action. Richardson is not like that. If you see the hits that he got, except the hit that he got against Houston, where he got his concussion and missed a game, that was his fault. Because just before getting into the end zone, he slowed down, and that's where he got hit and he got a concussion. But that's it. The shoulder injury, where he got the AC joint sprain, it was just a regular hit, and he wasn't looking to get hit, and he just fell on the wrong spot, and a massive guy was on his shoulder. So I've watched games obviously, and he does try to protect himself. He does slide. He does go out of bounds. He's just unfortunate. Now, what I'm saying is that why he's the ultimate wild card is that he has to play, but it's just a guy so big, 6'4", 245 pounds, and now this year he gained another 10 pounds. And when reporters asked him, "Did you do something different in your diet? You wanted to get bigger or something like that?" And he just answered, "I'm just big." That's what he answered. He's like, "I'm just big," and he's 22 years old, and his body's just still evolving. It's insane. So I'm just worried about guys that have those freakish, bodies, and do they have a tendency to have some kinds, I don't know if it's ligaments or bones that are different, where when you get hit, it's different. That's what I get scared of, because we do have a tight end. I don't know if you guys know Jelani Woods.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The guy is massive, 6'7", and it's the same thing. Like as soon as he gets a small injury, it becomes a huge deal because he has a freakish body. So I'm just worried about that. But yeah, if he plays 17 games, he's ranking ahead of Stroud. That's for sure.
Jason, before I ask you about the season prediction and division finish, I have a bit of trivia for you. Can you remember all starting QBs for the Colts since Andrew Luck retired?
That would be one every year.
Yes. Can you name them?
So since he got injured, or since 2012 when he got drafted?
Since the retirement.
All right. So as soon as he retired, we had Jacoby Brissett. So Ballard offered him a contract for 2 years. So Brissett got in 2019.
Yeah.
Then he sucked. So we got Phillip Rivers in 2020.
Yeah.
Then we tried the Carson Wentz experiment in 2021, which didn't last long. It lasted a year. Then we went with Matt Ryan in 2012. That didn't work out. And then we drafted Richardson in 2023. So that's actually the first year that we're going to have a starting quarterback that's going to start
back to back.
Back to back, since July. So
yeah, that's wild.
That's wild.
That's crazy.
That's wild, and I wanted to test to make sure you weren't a bandwagon Colts fan from the Manning days, and you absolutely are not.
Clearly, our fans are legitimate on this podcast.
Jason, how do you think the Colts are going to finish? Do you have a record and/or division finish for us?
Yeah, I think winning division, I think it's it's wishful thinking. I think Houston is a bit further ahead because I think Richardson is still his rookie year. He just played 4 games. So, but I do see them second. And I see maybe a 10-7. Hopefully, sneaking in the wild card. I think it's going to be a big battle, against teams like Cincinnati, Dolphins, maybe Pittsburgh. So. Yeah, it's going to be hard, but it's possible if AR stays healthy.
Bonus question: do you think Jonathan Taylor is back fully?
He's back.
He's back. Yeah.
He's back.
Like full go.
Because a Colts fan going to tell you he's not back.
No. But he's another wild card on the team. Like there was some injuries the last few years, and obviously finally the contract situation is done.
He was healthy down the stretch, though. No.
Go see his last game. Go see his last game.
Yeah.
He was healthy on the stretch.
Week 18 against Houston to try to make the playoffs.
Yes.
Go see that game.
Yes.
So he's back.
Yes. Go see that game, but they didn't put him in the final play. They gave it to some backup running back who dropped the ball.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty sure he remembers that.
But, was it the pass? Was it the catch? It was Minshew throwing the ball. So, I don't know. It was a bad throw. It was a bad throw, but the call was there. He was open.
Yeah.
It was just, fortunate.
Who's the Colts running back? The backup for the Colts right now. Like if Richardson goes down again.
Now it's Trey Sermon as a running back too, but if you want a pass catching running back, it's going to be Evan Hall.
Sorry, I meant backup quarterback.
Oh, backup quarterback? It's Joe Flacco.
Joey Flacco.
Oh, wow, they even got that secured pretty well, huh?
It's a bit better than Minshew. At least he throws downfield, That's what we have to show with Minshew. So.
Yeah.
Jason, thank you so much. Good luck to the Colts. Really appreciate your insight, and we'll look forward to seeing how the Colts and Anthony Richardson do this year. Thanks so much, Jason. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks for Jason.
Right, thanks, Jason.
Take care, Jay.
Good work. All right.
Great job. Thank you.
Bye. So we're all good with AR at top 3, I guess. I was surprised that you guys.
Yeah, look, I've changed my tune just because you've just been reading more stuff about this guy, and look, he's a freak athlete. Like Cam Newton was the guy for a few years in fantasy, right? Like where it was just like He was rushing, he would pass, he would whatever, and it's just, again, for me, it's going to be easy decision that I'm not going to have access to Anthony Richardson, so it's not going to be my acid on Sundays, like hoping he doesn't get hurt, right? But I'm not going to sit here and say that he can't be a fantasy championship winner and unseat even a Josh Allen as the number one QB in fantasy. Like Fab said it, he had 75 points in two and a half games. Like that's
It's
insane.
like 2.25, actually, not even 2.5 games.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like he was on fire. He had what was it that game? He had 2 rushing, 2 catching, and he had like 300 yards passing. Like it was insane.
No, he was doing it on
100
the
something yards
ground.
rushing.
He was doing
Yeah,
it on the ground and in the air, where a lot of people thought
yeah.
he wouldn't be able to throw, but like he was doing it both ways.
He's
Which
got a
is
cannon arm.
He has a
like,
cannon
Yeah.
arm. It
Yeah.
is very scary though, the health aspect.
Yeah, of course.
And, like I think Jay kind of alluded it felt like it was a bit of a fluke injury, but still, just the fact that he was literally injured in every single game,
But
adds cause to concern for me at the very least. Even though I have him ranked that high.
What's his name? Jim Irsay?
Jim Irsay, yeah.
Jim
Yeah,
Irsay,
Jim
yeah.
Irsay. He came out and he said like he doesn't want him to change his game. He
No.
wants them to
Well,
run
no, that's
the
what you
ball
drafted him
and find
for. Like, of
spots and
course,
continue
of
that. So
course.
like
You don't tell
He's
Steph,
just got to be
no,
smart
Yeah.
with it. That's all. He's just
you
got to
don't
be
tell
smart.
Steph Curry
yeah,
to
well that
stop
comes with
shooting threes.
experience.
No, exactly. He's
That's
got to be
exactly what he
smart
said.
about it.
Yeah.
He's got to be really smart about it.
No, I'm a lot. Me too. I changed my tune on him recently too. I was a little bit more skittish on him, but
I
no,
remember
I'm
when
all in.
what
Yeah.
pod was it? We were all freaking out. He was QB5.
Yeah.
We were like, what is going on? This guy is this. And like, fast forward a few weeks and we're ready to crown him QB1.
That training camp
overall.
buzz will get you. It'll get you.
That optimism is very infectious. Very infectious.
Now we'll move on to the Titans, Fab, the team you love because they signed Calvin Ridley. But they had a really good offseason. They made a clear shift from an offensive schematic standpoint. They ditched the defensive-minded Mike Vrabel. They went for the more offensive-minded Brian Callahan, who was with the Bengals. He brought his dad, Bill Callahan, to coach the offensive line. The Titans had one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL last year. So they're trying to improve a 28th ranked offense moving into 2024. Fab, which is more likely? Will Levis finishes as a bona fide high-end QB2 in the Caleb, Lawrence, Baker Mayfield range, so 17 to 22, or Calvin Ridley gets back to his pre-camping suspension form with a WR1 season where he caught 90 catches, 1,300 yards, and 9 TDs in 2020?
I think it's much more likely that Will Levis finishes a high-end QB2. For a majority of reasons. I mean, were you surprised at that answer? Like,
no.
That first of all, that's a bomb. That's a bomb season.
Guys, just for context, for any new listeners or people who didn't listen, some of our draft analysis or free agency analysis, Fab has a lot of gripe with Calvin Ridley. I'm not sure why. Is it because you owned him last year?
No, I owned him last year. And what you were talking about a QB5, QB5.
Sorry, wide receiver 4.
Wide receiver 4.
You're nuts.
Wide receiver 4. And I think he's going to finish within those numbers too. He's probably going to get like 90 catches, 900 yards, and like 5 or 6 touchdowns.
Okay, give your reasoning.
Those are wide receiver 2 numbers.
Those are wide receiver 2 numbers?
90 catches, PPR league? With 900 yards, 5 touchdowns, like
knock it down,
pretty.
Catches. So go off the ADP. So the Brian Callahan hiring is huge for Will Levis. The offense is really going to be tailored to him. And you saw what Brian Callahan did it with the Bengals. Like he made something out of Jake Browning. Who was a backup quarterback last? Yeah, he actually did something last year, and he's obviously tailored a very good offense for Joe Burrow too. Yeah, Will Levis is not Joe Burrow. We're not gonna sit here and say that he is, but I still think he's gonna be able to operate a very efficient offense. They added Tony Pollard. They still have what did I pronounce that correctly?
Pollard.
Tony Pollard.
Pollard.
I give a little accent on his name.
Pollard.
Tony Pollard. Tajai Spears is still there, and he was doing really well towards the stretch.
I didn't get that signing. I really that's a backfield to avoid, but
it is. But from a real quarterback perspective, real football perspective, and how this can help your quarterback, I think that's a fantastic signing because you have 2 guys over there that can catch the ball and they can run.
Yeah.
And Tony Pollard does better with less reps, which I think ultimately he will help him. And I wouldn't be surprised if his efficiency is better this year than it was last year, because last year he was overutilized. And you saw how bad it was. He only had good games versus very porous defenses. And every other, and I know this for a fact because I drafted him, and every other game beyond that, he didn't really play all that well. He wasn't very efficient. He wasn't able to find the holes and all that stuff. So I think that, like, and those two guys are ranked like very similar. So you can imagine, yes,
30,
it's a
31.
backfield. It's a backfield to avoid, but at the same time, I think this will ultimately help Levis actually have a very good season, a very decent season. Like you mentioned Baker Mayfield, I think that's a good comparison. I'm looking at the numbers last year too. Like I see something around like a Matthew Stafford type of season last year, like not a super high amount of touchdowns, but fairly efficient, like 3,800 yards, 25 touchdowns, maybe 59 INTs. He doesn't do much with his legs, but those are numbers going to get you like operating within like a top 20 quarterback status, top 18 quarterback status. And when he did take over last year from Ryan Tannehill after he got injured, the guy tore it up. Like his first game, he threw 4 touchdowns.
The Texans game was amazing.
Yeah,
He looked
like
great.
he has it.
Bombs away. Yeah,
he has it, and he does have a lot of good offensive pieces around him. They also added Tyler Boyd. So they're doing whatever they can to insulate him and bring in an offensive-minded head coach to be able to propel this kid into the next level. So I think it's much more likely that Will Levis does hit that 17, 18, 19 QB range than it is for Calvin Ridley to go back to, because those are the bomb numbers: 90 catches, 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns. Also, hold on a second. Looking at
like, okay, we get it. You don't like Calvin Ridley.
Hold on a second. I actually think Ridley and Hopkins are going to finish in similar stats at the end of the year, because I think Hopkins is still the dog there. Like I know Ridley is great, and I know I've been pooping on the guy quite a bit, but like he's a fantastic player. But Hopkins is the guy there, and Hopkins going at 38 versus Ridley at 32. Like Hopkins is cheaper for better value, in my opinion. But I'm on board with
enough.
Fab.
I'm done.
Fab. I don't know what it
I'm
is that
done.
you're smoking for wide receiver 4 even numbers.
No, like wide receiver
The guy
3
had
is gonna finish.
you had 4 or 5. Let's
Smoking that
just
Will
call a
Levis.
spade a spade
Hey,
here.
we could all change opinions. We did it with Anthony Richardson. Just saying.
He finished last year as wide receiver 18. Okay, so he had 76 catches. He had 1,100 yards. He had 8 TDs as well, and he had the most touchdown end zone throws. Excuse me, with 24. So with inconsistent play of
ton of
Lawrence,
drops last year too.
Yeah. There was but targets. I'm saying 24 targets. Lawrence didn't have his best year. Lawrence really had a terrible year too. You're telling me you convert a few more of those end zone throws? He had 24. It was like above and beyond the second place guy. I'm going to play devil's advocate. It's obviously easier. I think your answer to Will Levis is probably the correct one.
Well, it is
because
so
low end QB2 does kind of make sense for Levis, but again, he's got to show us that he can do that. I agree that Hopkins is still the dog in the Titans. He's still going to be the WR1. It's going to be tough for Ridley to regain those crazy numbers. 90 catches seems a lot playing as a second wide receiver on your team. Seems like a big number. Not impossible. Hopkins, he is getting up there in age, north of 30. Could an injury potentially happen? That's kind of how Ridley's production spiked as well last year with Christian Kirk missing 4 or 5 games. Man, 1,300 yards and 9. But look, he had 8 TDs last year. I think the TD count is pretty accurate. He could be definitely in that 8 to 10 range. But I think he'll probably mimic that 75 to 80 catch season. 80 would be his highest, and maybe, like I said, 1,100 yards.
Yeah, because Ridley needed Julio Jones to only play 9 games in 2020 to get those stats. That's one thing that is easy to forget about. Julio had 51 catches, 771 yards, and only 3 touchdowns. It's an interesting mix of talent because Hopkins is more suited towards the slot. And last year, when I saw Ridley, it felt like he was better suited towards the slot, even though they would try to play him out wide more. Mm-hmm. And Treylon Burks, when he was in college, which a lot of people forgot about him, and he was drafted in the first round. He was also better in the slot. So they have three wide receivers who are more suited towards the slot. Someone has to play outside. Someone has to play flanker. I love Chigakwankwo. I think he's going to have a breakout year. 53 catches last year, almost 600 yards.
Yeah.
So I actually think Levis to
the tight end?
The tight end. Yeah.
Yep.
I actually think Levis, to Fab's point, is really in line for a good. There's a ton of talent there, and how he's going to spread it around will be interesting. How Hopkins and Ridley will eat, I think that's similar to kind of what Mike said regarding the Texans wide receiver corps and the Bears wide receiver corps. Depending on the ADPs, it might be one to avoid. Although Ridley is going WR32, Hopkins is going WR38. So those are decent values, I would say.
Both of them are, I think. Yeah,
both of them are decent values. But I think with Levis, I think there's a lot of upside there, and with the new offensive infrastructure, I think he can have a potential breakout season as long as he avoids the boneheaded throws. And he has a little Josh Allen in him where he runs into defenders that he doesn't need to. He doesn't slide.
He has a bit of a dog in him.
He's a bit of a dog in him, which is a good thing. But
the thing is he had that one game he showed us, right? 4 TDs, and then everyone broke the bank, myself included, on especially in a 2 QB league. I needed to shore up my QB2 spot and spent all my fab on Levis. I think he had maybe 2 touchdowns the rest of the year passing.
4.
There you go. 4.
He was good against the Dolphins.
He finished 8-4, touchdown to INT
That was
ratio.
a really scrappy game.
I thought he played pretty solid.
Like it was probably his best game without throwing multiple touchdowns.
The Steelers game, Nacc, I thought he was horrible. The Steelers game was rough.
He
was terrible.
Against Jacksonville, he threw for 2 touchdowns, no INTs. It was his second best game statistically after the game against Atlanta.
Yeah, so he didn't he didn't show like too much when everyone was kind of rushing. There's definitely upside. I got to see it, right?
But he was also like highly touted, like coming into the draft. He was supposed to go number 2, right?
He was, and he dropped to the second round. And there was the pictures of him with his ex-girlfriend, and
there's a lot of other stuff.
A lot of stuff with his ex-girlfriend too. Look, at the end of the day, like
I stopped myself from saying another S word there. Just by the way,
thank you. We're trying to hit the PG-13 here,
and we are gonna hit it.
Yes, we are. Yeah, we haven't sworn in about 6 or 7 episodes. But like at the end of the day, if you could, like if we're in a 2 QB league, which obviously we're in, and you could hit on one of the top QBs, and you could get Levis really, really late as your second QB, I think that's like he's going right now at QB 24. He's going above Geno Smith, Russell Wilson.
I think a lot of people are not going to target Will Levis as a QB 2.
No.
So I think you can realistically grab him as a QB 3 and have a very nice QB room. Like I think when in our scenario, like in our league right now, I don't think anyone's going to draft Will Levis, quite frankly. And he's going to be one of the last guys to get drafted. He's probably going to be someone's QB 3.
I disagree with that. I think someone.
Yeah, I think I disagree with that as well.
Okay.
I think Fab is trying to throw some smoke on the pod.
Curb some biasness over to the people that are listening. Guys, Will Levis sucks.
So we're gonna,
don't draft him.
Let's move on to the team with the quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, who I feel there's the least amount of momentum with Trevor Lawrence. Like if we talk about, and I know our question to Nacc isn't necessarily going to be about Trevor Lawrence, but just the vibes around him are just so weak. And he does have an interesting supporting cast, most notably Evan Engram, who I love. I love what he provided for the Jaguars last year.
Former Giant
indeed. He was second in the AFC and fourth in the NFL with 114 catches last year. He had 963 receiving yards and 4 TDs. Guys, that was the second highest catch total by a tight end in NFL history. It was just too short of Zach Ertz, who had 116 in 2018. So, Nacc, fact or fiction, Evan Engram going as the 7th tight end is the best value pick out of all other Jaguars pass catchers. Factoring in that Kirk is going at WR27, Brian Thomas WR47, and Gabe Davis WR64.
Yeah, look, I'm going to say fact, but one could argue Gabe Davis 146th overall is pretty damn good value for a wide receiving corp that has pretty much what Christian Kirk there right now. I know they drafted Brian Thomas, who's going significantly ahead of Gabe Davis, which I think is probably incorrect.
I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't get that either.
By a fair margin. We're talking like what is it? It's almost 20 wide receivers and 50 picks difference overall, which seems a lot. Like that's 5 rounds for us. 5 rounds difference between Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas, who's a rookie. Like I understand the hype of the rookie, and he's good, but I don't know. I found that very, very strange. But yeah, look, I definitely think that Engram has that value. Yeah, he definitely has the means, and I think with what we just said about the mix, like you have Brian Thomas coming in, who's going to be a rookie. You have Gabe Davis, who's going to be also learning a new offense, although he just runs straight.
Yeah.
So he's probably going to do the same thing there. But no, I honestly think he probably has the greatest opportunity right now to even finish as that tight end 1. I think that the tight end is really, when you look at the tight end position this year, it's more wide open than it's been in many years. There's a 100%. Lot of dogs out there, especially in the top 10. And I think realistically, any of those guys can kind of push for the tight end 1 in fantasy football. Like, I don't think it's going to Kelsey this year. I think he probably takes a little bit more of a step back in that regard. Does he still finish in the top 5? I think so. But I think he does take a little bit of a step back. It's going to be like a Sam Laporta, who's going to be, up and coming. There's a McBride that's there. But Evan Engram is not far behind. I think he was drafted with the Giants to do amazing things, and he just, inconsistency at the quarterback play and injuries really did not help his cause. But now him staying healthy and showing us what he can do. He's a huge guy. Like, catch radius, he looks more like a wide receiver out there, I feel, at a lot of times. So yeah, I would say he has definite great value of tight end 7. That seems incredibly low for Engram. I think he finished 3rd last year. So I think 7th is very low and definitely good value.
Fab?
I don't disagree. I mean, it pains me to say, because what he could have been with the Giants, obviously, could have been like a fantastic tight end for us, and we just weren't able to utilize him properly. But to Nacc's point, the tight end position, you throw a dart in the wall, like any one of those guys can finish tight end 1 this year. There's a lot of guys out there that like is so deep, and it's just hard to figure out exactly who's going to be the guy at number 1 at the end of the season. I think we can all agree it might not be Kelsey anymore. I think Evan Engram, just by the fact that he's a PPR monster, he can definitely be up there. And as a tight end 7, I actually that value pick for me really speaks strongly, because I'm looking at all the other guys that are going around him. Like, I would take him over George Kittle. I would take him over Dalton Kincaid. I would take him over Mark Andrews. I would probably Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, well, that's
come on,
for sure, Roger.
Roger, I am
Andrews,
speaking. Roger,
I don't know if I'll take him before Andrews.
I think that's where it stops for me.
Isaiah Likely, man. The likely thing is
that scares me a bit.
It scares me a lot, and he looked really good when Andrews is out.
And I know that Evan Engram has had his injury concerns as of late, but he's been pretty healthy so far. Whereas like Mark Andrews, it's a bit of the opposite. Like he has had his injury scares. But I like Evan Engram at 7 a lot. Like, if you can grab him at 7, then you potentially have a guy that's going to be on a fantasy championship roster.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it's the 7 ADP for.
I think it's just there's too many good guys at tight end for the first time in a long time. So it's like, where do you put them? Like, George Kittle still has name value, Dalton Kincaid name value, Mark Andrews name value. Like, all these guys are actually worth their salt.
Okay, let me ask you this. Then.
Can't wait.
If Ayuk does get traded, does Kittle go up your draft board a little bit?
I mean, if he does, it can't be much more than 1 spot, just because he's already so high as it is.
So you'll still take no, but I'm saying because you're saying you'd rather take, like, you're taking Engram at 7 more than Kittle at, I think he's 4 or 5?
6.
There you go. So right before him, you're still taking Engram. Like,
I feel they do different things though. Like
for sure,
they do
two different
Kittle
players,
is a
100%.
proper tight end though.
No,
right?
but more so like Ayuk's targets are going to be the deep man-to-man. he's gonna win man to man. They're gonna throw it deep to him. Versus I feel like Kittle and Debo fight for their targets because they're more yak guys.
That's a good point.
Like Kittle was still 5th last year, right? Like finished 5th.
Yeah.
You know, ahead of
and quietly, I feel like he finished 5th.
Yeah, for sure. He does not like he still had 90 targets, 65 catches, 6 TDs, 1,020 yards. Like,
yeah, he had that one game where I think he had 3 touchdowns.
He had the most yards of all tight ends. Like, if he had scored a couple more touchdowns, it's just that offense is loaded. Like, there's McCaffrey there who scored 20 something touchdowns.
I think, but with your question, you have to move him up a peg or two. I think you have to, because there is going to be that vacuum of targets that's going to exist now that has to go to somebody.
And Purcell's been hurt.
Yeah,
hasn't been in training camp either, so they're having that kind of issue. I think that's what's kind of, because do we see Ayuk being traded, or do we see him?
No, I don't think he's
I can't see him being traded unless like something terrible happens. Like,
they can't trade him.
They absolutely need him. It's Super Bowl or bust this year. Like, it's not Super Bowl appearance or bust. It's Super Bowl win.
It's Super Bowl or bust. Yeah, and they know it, because when they pay Brock Purdy, they're gonna have no money left over for anything.
Which is happening next year. He's eligible for
after next year.
After 2024. Guys, apologies, I forgot a Titans prediction. Fab, you go back to you, and then
we got so enamored with the Calvin Ridley conversation, we totally forgot about this. So actually, I was looking at their schedule. They got a tough schedule, man. Like, their schedule is not easy at all. I had them finishing actually like 5-12 or even 6-11, not too far away from what they did last year. Like, I have them starting off like 0-4. They got like a ridiculously tough schedule. And let me bring it up, because I had it.
Yeah, bring it up, because if Levis plays the way we think he would play, and that defense is getting they're getting Snead, right? They got Snead.
Yeah, but okay. So week 1 at Chicago Bears. I think the Bears are going to win that one.
Okay.
They're at home. Okay. A lot of hype. Okay, fine.
Sure.
Week 2, New York Jets. The Titans are at home, but I still think the Jets are going to win. Week 3, Green Bay Packers. The Packers are going to win. Week 4 at Miami. So they could potentially start off 0-4. Then they have a bye week. Then they go up against the Colts, and I have them getting their first win after the bye. They're at home against the Colts, division game. Fine, Then at Buffalo, loss. At Detroit, loss. At home versus New England, win. At the Chargers, I think the Chargers are going to take that one. At home versus the Vikings, it can go either way. We don't know how JJ McCarthy's going to do this year. Then I think
Darnold's starting the entire year.
True.
I think Darnold's starting the entire year.
That's a good point. I don't disagree with that.
So
they still have the Bengals on there too. Like, I see them going 5-12, 6-11. Like, they start off really tough, man.
Nacc, what do you think for the Jags?
Yeah, they have just as hard as a schedule. They start in Miami, then have Cleveland at home, and then go to Buffalo, and then at Houston. So it's a while. I feel like they could be almost 0-4 to start the year.
They're facing the Browns.
I'm probably going in that 6-11, 7-9. I think they take a step back. They have a really, really hard schedule. And look, Lawrence got his money now. Does he really care all that much?
They're in London for 2 weeks in a row.
Yes, they are.
Classic.
Like,
at 2 different stadiums. Those are I've pegged those as wins, because they have it's Chicago and New England. Those are like easy wins. But then they play the Packers at home. They play at Philly, the Vikings, the Lions. They have Houston twice. Tennessee, the Jets. Like that
tough.
Right now become like a tougher schedule at Vegas, which is never an easy place to play. So if you're looking at the schedule, it's kind of hard to start stacking the wins. Guys,
this is the first time that we've done the division previews, and we didn't have everyone winning the division.
No, not winning the division.
There was one where, like, literally, was it?
No, they were just always had a winning record.
It was last week.
All winning records. I think it was winning records.
Everyone's gonna win the division.
The Bears are gonna start off like 12-0 or something.
Oh yeah, remember your Bears are starting 8-1 or something. Yeah. Okay.
Honestly, though, like, it's interesting because I find the AFC South, we laughed about it for a long time, and now, like, just the quarterbacks, there's a ton of talent. It's really on the up and
the division games are going to be fun. That's what's going to make the division winners. But I think look, no one, even like Houston, a team like Houston, like I know that they had like 10, 11 wins that in Indianapolis, like the whole division could easily have like 9 wins potentially, and 9-8, and then have that, like one person go to the playoffs. But I don't think, like, I think Mike was saying it, like no one's running away with the division, right? Like it's going to be very, very
It's going to be a
close.
tough division.
I think the division games are going to be something to watch.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. So that was our AFC South preview. Thanks so much to Mike Di Lisio and Jason De Oliveira. And if you guys want, you could check out our other divisional previews. We've done the NFC East, the AFC East, the NFC North, the AFC North, and now the AFC South. So we're over halfway through it. We've had some great guests. Please go check out that content if you want some previews on specific players. And of course, you can always follow us on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube, on TikTok. My God, we're on so many social media platforms. It's so hard to remember.
All of them. We're on all of them.
All of them. But it's on the Bush League Huddle podcast. And of course, we're going to have a lot of content coming up. Thank you so much, guys, and talk to you soon.
Peace out, guys.
Bye.